Uh, okay. I am a terrible, terrible friend to have because I remember everything. So I remember the time you stole Visine from Price Chopper and got fired because you didn't want to look high, because you didn't want to get fired. I remember the time you hid your coat at the bar because you really didn't want it to get stolen, and then you couldn't find it at the end of the night and you knew somebody had stolen it. I remember the time you puked on me in the car. I remember the time I lied to your mom to say that, you were sleeping at my place. And I remember every boast you made. That time you said George Clooney was the best Batman. I remember that. I don't forget these things. I would like to forget some of them. I would like to forget a lot of them. But even if I'm the one who was drunk or high in the back of the car when you thought it was a good idea to drive away from the gas station without paying, it wasn't. Because I remember the officers who pulled us over. And so this is like my extremely low-level, extremely awful, useless, no good superpower that does nothing except make my life a little bit more complicated. Make my friends a few months later being like, I told you that? No, I didn't tell you that. I didn't tell you about that. Yes, you did. Unfortunately. You did tell me about that time where you thought burying money in the backyard would grow a money tree. Where you thought burying your little brother at the beach was a good idea. And where your mom paid you money to throw rocks at seagulls, except that was me and that was my mom. I don't forget that either, Mom, I'm sorry. She really hates birds, like a lot. They got stuck in her hair when she was a child riding a bike under a tree, and my grandpa had to cut them out with scissors. It was the 70s, hair was really long. And you think she'd get like a really cool superpower to that, like really traumatic thing happening in your youth, coming back, wearing a costume, going around the city dressed as a sparrow or something, but it never happened. We really fail to follow up on these things in my family. But yeah, I have this sort of shitty memory that's not photographic. It's not that good. I don't get a TV show. I just get to remember terrible things. And yeah, it made high school a little bit easier. It made undergrad a little bit easier. It made making friends on occasion a little bit easier. But there was also that awkward distance where you're always going to maybe know more about somebody than they remember about you. And I mean, I think a lot of, my shitty superpower aside, a lot of the powers that we like to think about, or the powers we've talked about today, the flying, the invisibility, the brute strength, we like to streamline those. We like to put them into a very useful narrative, because Ruins actually comes from like a frickin' Warren Ellis comic from like 95, but it's accurate for this shit, where yes, the Hulk that we know is massive and brutal and Mark Ruffalo and Edward Norton and Eric Bana all at once, but he could have just been a pile of tumors. And green ones, but still. And Wolverine, he could still have that regenerating flesh, and he could still have, that amazing Hugh Jackman body, but that metal skeleton could also be rotting his body from the inside out, and yet he could never die, just stay in constant pain, because any metal that powerful can't be healthy to have inside your skin. Any of these psychic, magical X-Men we have will definitely have driven themselves crazy by now. Any of these sort of, Cyclops alone has killed probably entire villages. But we want the narrative to make sense, and in Ruins, it won't. In Ruins, everybody is using their power for something awful, or their power is uncontrollable, or their power does have that dark side. And I remember that about the people I know. I remember that about the people in my life. I remember that, it is amazing to have that one relative who never gets sick, who seems amazingly strong, who seems unstoppable. And then it's that very immune system that's kept them safe. It's that very system inside their body. It's that wonderful super strength they have that becomes the flaw, that decides to turn on itself, that decides after 60 years the lungs will give out, the heart will give out, that maybe these cells need to start reproducing for no reason. And so the things that once did make us strong or were fun or were something we were proud of, we obviously aren't anymore. And that's why also at times it's not hard to see why somebody like Superman, who actually does have superpowers amongst us, who actually does stand outside of us, is so alone, is kind of by himself, is in the end looking back on everybody else. There's a superpower to ascribe to my family where everyone just like lives a really long time, like 102. Is Cunningham gonna cry? That's what I want to know, but they live. I've had at least 3 or 4 grandparents make it to 102, and that sounds great, doesn't it? But then your kids start dying before you. Maybe some of your grandkids start dying before you. Maybe some of your great-grandkids start dying before you, and then it doesn't seem like so much fun anymore. The idea of living forever or somehow taking that on, in the end, statistically, you end up basically like James Franco in 127 hours. Basically, if you do live that long, if we were immortal, we'd all end up trapped in places where nobody could find us. Just through the sheer passage of time. Alone and alive, but with nobody around. And I guess for me, that always goes back to this memory of, say, my mom paying me money to throw rocks at seagulls, or my friend Nathan getting fired for stealing Visine. Is that I haven't spoken to Nathan in like 10 years. He could be dead for all I know, but I'm not going to forget that about him. I'm not going to forget about the time when the wind came through my neighborhood and blew all the baby birds out of the tree and they exploded all over the car, and I came outside. I was like 4, and it was just like I'd only sort of started going to church, and I thought like, oh, hell is here for sure. It just rained pink dead baby bird carcasses all over my dad's teal LeBaron. Wonderful. But I still remember that vividly, and I was 4, and I really wish I didn't. And so when I think about the ways that our powers or our bodies, because that's where all these powers are supposed to be coming from, right? Our bodies. Even if you're the Hulk. They do eventually betray us, and everyone does eventually leave you, and I will remember when my parents do pass, and I will remember everything about their lives, and I will remember everything my friends did or didn't say about the betrayals and the mistakes and all the terrible things we do to each other. And that's something I'm going to look forward to forgetting. Because eventually, maybe this memory thing will turn against me. Maybe my brain will give out on itself. Maybe I'll only remember those things from when I was 4 years old and the sky was raining birds and everything looked like hell. But I really hope it doesn't turn out that way. Because in the end, with this sort of strange, fucked up memory where I remember even tests I took in grade 7 where, yes, she did trick us and every answer was B, that I will want to forget. And for most of these superheroes, for most of our families, for anybody who's going to tell a story here tonight, it really means, in the end, I just want to be remembered. So thank you.